Sick is a new slasher horror thriller that came out on Peacock a couple of weeks ago, I think. It may have been released at maybe a couple festivals or something last year, but it got a release on Peacock this year, so it's technically a 2023 movie. This film was directed by John Hyams, and it stars Gideon Adlon and Brie Million, I think that's her name. I apologize if I got one of their names wrong. Either way, this is a movie that takes place during the height of the pandemic a few years ago in 2020. There are two friends, Parker and Mary, who decide that they want to get away for some seclusion for quarantine. They decide to quarantine at this really big, secluded lake house that one of their families owns, and so they decide to go to this lake house, and they're quarantining and everything is all good, and then all of a sudden you find out maybe they're not as alone at this quarantined lake house as maybe they thought they were. I gotta say, I usually have a pretty mixed opinion on films that either take place at the height of the pandemic or try to use the pandemic to formulate their story. There's always been something that feels a little bit icky and tacky about it, something that feels exploitive, something that feels a little tone deaf about using this major event that has cost so many people so much. But I get it, inspiration comes from a lot of different places, and I get that some people would use the pandemic itself to, I don't know, get inspired by that and create a story off of that. I wonder if YouTube is gonna strike this video from the algorithm because I keep using the word pandemic, but I don't know what other word to use. So sorry, YouTube, you're just gonna have to bite it this time. The way that they treat the pandemic, the way that they talk about it in this film, it feels a lot more respectful and it feels a lot more real. It really captures a lot of the paranoia and the fear that was, no pun intending, spreading around this time in 2020 when, remember, we didn't have a vaccine yet. It captures some of the little moments like the recoil and fear that you might see from people in a supermarket if somebody coughed out loud. It captures the panic that you see on people's faces when they see somebody that doesn't wear a mask. This film treated it with respect, whereas I feel like a lot of other pandemic inspired movies just try to use it as a punchline, or they try to make a joke out of it, and I appreciated that this film did not go that way. I also want to single out the performances here. I thought everybody did a pretty good job. Gideon Adlon in particular, she feels like the main character in this movie. She probably gives the best performance, but the two friends together, Beth Million, I think, who plays her friend Mary, I think she does a great job as well. One of the other things I really appreciate about this film is the way that the antagonists and their struggle against the protagonist is framed and filmed. A lot of times in slasher movies, you see people doing ninja shit, you see the antagonist suddenly disappear and teleport when that's not really possible. The antagonists in slasher movies are usually portrayed as these big, powerful boogeymen or these unstoppable forces, or are constantly just killing things and are never put into a real fight or a real struggle. But in this film, there's something very vulnerable and human about the way they decide to portray the antagonists. I mean, they're wearing all black, they're masked up, yet every time they're about to kill somebody, it feels like they're human too. It feels like they can get tired. It feels like they can get hit. And this creates some very intense fight and struggle sequences. While they're killers and you do know that they're trying to kill people, you don't know if they're gonna survive the encounter. That's something that's just a little bit different from seeing somebody like Mike Myers or Jason Voorhees. These guys don't get hurt, they don't get tired, they don't feel anything. They didn't just overpower all of their victims, and I appreciated that. I thought that added a little bit more realism to the movie. The movie also does have something interesting it's trying to say in the third act about the pandemic and about the way that some people were a little bit too nonchalant when all of this started going down in the first place. In all actuality, the third act is kind of where this movie lost me, but I'm gonna get to the other problems in the movie, which is, oh God, these people are so stupid. I get it. Humans make mistakes. Humans are flawed. You're not always gonna make the perfect decision. And you could go back through a lot of horror movies in history and you could be like, yep, that was stupid. They shouldn't have done that. And it's easy for us to say that as the audience. This is one of those situations where it feels like character IQ points are intentionally dropped by the writers in order to push the plot along. And it just kind of got irritating after a while. This is not your normal, oh shit, that was stupid. You shouldn't have done that. It's really more of, you had no reason to do that. Why would you do that? Oh, because we needed the plot to go in this direction. If you get me grumpy enough, I'm gonna call this Game of Thrones syndrome, because I feel like this was a thing that happened with Game of Thrones toward the end, where they intentionally made characters either act stupid or act character in order to get the story to where they needed to get the story to. And it just, it irritates my soul. Putting that aside, there are some predictable moments and some cliches and tropes you would associate with this genre. So there's gonna be some stuff that's not really gonna surprise you, some stuff you're gonna be able to predict and see coming. underwhelming. I would say the third act, while the movie does have something interesting it's trying to say about the pandemic, it feels very clumsy and sloppily executed. It honestly gave me mixed feelings because this is the part of the movie where some of it really started to feel a little bit more like satire, a little bit more like, oh, the pandemic is a joke, even though I understood what they were going for. Overall, Sick was a fun, suspenseful, pandemic era type of thriller that if you're a slasher fan, I feel like you're gonna enjoy. It doesn't set the world on fire. It's not gonna break the wheel or anything like that. Ha, another Game of Thrones reference. I feel like most horror fans are gonna have somewhat of a good time with this one. I'm gonna leave Sick in the Daily Planet. Those are my thoughts on Sick. Tell me, what are your favorite slasher films of all time? Give me those in the comment section down below. Please like and subscribe to the Superfan Show, and if you like what you see, tell me how you feel, and stay tuned to hear more from the Man of Steel. Peace.